This is the fourth in a series of videos designed to help guitar players understand how to read music. In the first two videos, we covered the music staff and notes in the treble clef. In the last video, we covered basic rhythms like quarter notes, half notes, dotted half notes, whole notes, and rests, and ties, and time signatures. That would be 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4 time. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about eighth notes, 16th notes, dotted quarter notes, and tempo markings. If you've never read rhythms before, you should watch part 3, and if you've never read music before, you should start with part 1. A single eighth note looks like a quarter note, except it has a little flag attached to the stem, and eighth notes can be grouped together by beams, usually in sets of 2 or 4. Eighth notes are twice as fast as quarter notes, so when you count eighth notes, you have to subdivide the beat. You count quarter notes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You count eighth notes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Notice that the basic beat is the same. If I clap on 1, 2, 3, and 4, my clapping is the same speed whether I'm counting quarter notes or eighth notes. So quarter notes, 1, 2, 3. Now eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So it takes 2 eighth notes to make one beat, or there are 2 eighth notes per quarter note. And if I'm in another time signature, say 3/4 time, I'm going to be counting up to 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. I'm going to play some examples for you mixing up eighth notes with the rhythms you learned in the last video. I'm going to use the metronome so you can feel and hear the beat a little bit more easily, and the metronome is going to be clicking away on the quarter note. Our first example is in 4/4 time. 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4. Our next example is in 3/4 time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3. If an eighth note is half a beat of sound, an eighth rest is half a beat of silence. And as with the other types of rest, I'm going to put parentheses around the number or the and of the beat wherever an eighth rest happens to appear. I'm going to play through some examples with eighth note rests, and notice that when we have the eighth note rest, you're going to see those single eighth notes with the flag on the stem. Our first example is in 4/4 time, and it's eighth notes followed by eighth note rests. Notice that I'm going to be muting the strings on the eighth rests. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Our next example is also in 4/4 time. This time the eighth note rests fall on beats 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we're playing on the ands of the beat with those single eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the rhythms are more mixed up in this third example. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and. Our next rhythm is the dotted quarter note. A dotted quarter note is the same as tying a quarter note to an eighth note, and we covered ties in the previous video. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That dotted quarter eighth note rhythm is pretty common, but every once in a while you're going to see it reversed with the eighth note first, and here's how you count that. 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Here's a few rhythm examples that include dotted eighth notes. This example is in 4/4 time, and most of the dotted quarter notes are the usual dotted quarter note followed by an eighth. But watch out for measure 3. In that measure, we have an eighth note followed by a dotted quarter note. 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And this next example is in 3/4 time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3. 1 and 2 and 3, 1, 2, 3. The last rhythm we're going to look at in this video is the 16th note. A single eighth note has one flag, and a single 16th note has two flags. Just like eighth notes, 16th notes are usually beamed together. Eighth notes have one beam and 16th notes have two beams, and usually you're going to see them beamed together in groups of 2 or 4. Eighth notes are twice as fast as quarter notes, and 16th notes are twice as fast as eighth notes. You count quarter notes 1, 2, 3, 4. You count eighth notes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you count 16th notes 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. We're adding more notes within the beat, but the underlying beat stays the same. So if I clap on 1, 2, 3, and 4, my clapping is going to be the same speed whether I'm counting quarter notes, eighth notes, or 16th notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. There are 2 eighth notes per quarter note and 4 16th notes per quarter note. I'm going to play through some more examples with mixed rhythms, and this time I'm going to throw in some 16th notes. Our first example is in 4/4 time. In the first measure we have eighths and quarters, and in the second measure we have 16th notes and quarter notes. 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1E and a 2, 3E and a 4. Now we're in 3/4 time, and this one features a pretty common rhythm combining eighth notes and 16th notes. If you look at the third measure especially, you'll see this rhythm over and over again. We have an eighth note followed by 2 16th notes. That measure is going to be counted 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a. And here's the whole example. 1 and 2, 3. 1 and a 2, 3. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 1, 2, 3. Now we're in 2/4 time, and in this one we're reversing that combination from the previous example. Now we have 2 16th notes followed by an eighth note, so that those first two measures would be counted 1E and 2, 1E and 2. And here's the whole example. 1E and 2, 1E and 2, 1 and 2, and 1E and 2. And of course, if there's a 16th note, there's a 16th rest. The 16th rest looks like an eighth rest with an extra flag attached. So 16th notes have 2 flags or 2 beams, and the 16th rest also has 2 flags. Here's some examples with 16th note rests. This first example is in 4/4 time, and we see 3 16th notes followed by a 16th note rest. That's going to be counted 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. And in this example, we have a 16th note followed by a 16th note rest, followed by 2 16th notes. This is going to be counted 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. We've covered quite a few rhythms already, and there's plenty more that we're just not going to get into right now. That will include things like 32nd notes, dotted eighths, triplets, and you'll encounter these as you get further and further into your music. One thing I do want to talk about right now, though, is tempo markings. Usually at the beginning of your music, right above the time signature, you're going to see a tempo marking that tells you how fast or slowly to play your music. Sometimes the tempo marking appears as a metronome marking. In this example, we see that quarter note equals 120. This means that you're going to be playing quarter notes at 120 beats per minute. You can find the speed with a metronome. I've got my trusty old Dr. Beat right here, and I do mean old. It's about 20 years old, and it's still ticking away like it was new. It's set to 120, and if I turn it on, it's going to click away at 120 beats a minute. And if the tempo is, for example, quarter equals 88, I just set my metronome to 88 and find the tempo that way. Sometimes instead of a metronome marking with a specific tempo you're supposed to play, you'll see a musical term giving you a general idea of how fast you're supposed to be playing. A lot of musical terms are in Italian, and that includes tempo markings. Some common tempo markings are adagio, meaning slow, and andante, which is kind of slow. Also, it can mean walking tempo. Moderato, that one's pretty easy to figure out. Allegro, meaning fast, and presto, very fast. There are plenty of other musical terms too. If you run across a term you don't know, get yourself a music dictionary or just look them up online. We've covered quite a bit in just 4 videos, and it's all going to start to make more sense once you start putting it to use. You're not going to be reading complex rhythms right away. The best thing to do is start with simple rhythms like quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes, and work your way up from there. If you're looking for a place to start, check out my guitar books. There's a link in the description below. There you go. That was 8th notes, 16th notes, dotted quarter notes, and tempo markings. In the next video, we're going to go over a new type of time signature as we study 3/8 and 6/8 time. That's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time with more guitar tips.